Hello and welcome to this edition of Diaspra Central Spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, with me today in the studio, it's a young lady that is definitely making sure not only that she is engaging the diaspora in the continent and also that the continent is engaged in the diaspora. She is a scholar. She is an author. Lindsay, welcome to Diaspora Central.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, you're quite welcome. Maybe we should say Dr.
Dr. Gary, coming soon.
Yeah, you already done the work on it.
Yes.
So are you gonna be Doctor? You said Dr. Garrett. So you're gonna go by your last name instead of your first name.
Yeah, I like Dr. Gary. My dad called me Dr. Gary from when I was a child.
Okay.
So he's manifested that over my life. So it's Dr. Gary.
Not even El Gary, just Dr.
Dr.
Gary.
Yeah. That's it. Or Prof. Gary in the meantime.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, indeed. You're a professor, a scholar.
Yes,
yeah,
I am.
You're a professor, a scholar. Yeah. So you mentioned your father, huh?
Yes.
You have a very close-knit family?
We do have a very close-knit family. My parents, I only have one sibling, but we're very close.
Okay. What's the father's name?
I don't know if I should put all his business out here.
You don't want to?
In the streets, but his last name is Gary.
Okay. And what about your mom?
Last name's Gary.
Okay.
They're awesome, though.
Yeah.
Really supportive.
Yeah. Are they Houston based also? Are you from Houston? Where
yes. So I'm from Houston. I was born and raised in 3rd Ward. Okay. My dad is from Port Arthur, which is, like an hour going toward Louisiana.
Okay.
And then my mom is also from Houston. My grandparents are the ones from Louisiana.
Oh, okay. So you from Houston by way of Louisiana.
Yes. Yeah. And Africa, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. let's kind of trace the heritage back to Africa. What's your closest connection to Africa?
Well, I mean, I have ancestors that came from so many parts of Africa, from present day countries, DR Congo, Senegal, Nigeria, Mauritius, where else? Guinea-Bissau, literally all over the continent. But most recently, most of my ancestors came to Louisiana in the 1700s.
Okay.
But I did have some ancestors that came in the 1800s. I had a couple, so I know at least 2. One came from Mauritius. I have the record that him and his mother and his sister were actually enslaved after leaving Mauritius. They were Malagasy. Okay. And then I have an ancestor that probably came from Ghana, somewhere around that region. I don't know much about that ancestor, but I do know.
Gold Coast.
Exactly. I do know that she didn't speak French.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure she came from that region based off of the family description, and she was some type of royalty. Okay. So I'm pretty sure. Those are both on my dad's side.
Got you. So that's all. And what about on your mom? So you able to trace much?
So my mom's side, they come from the same area. So I know for sure on her mother's side, Mending from Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Balant people. Okay. I also know the Temne people from Sierra Leone. Oh, okay. And I'm sure there are more, but I know for sure of those.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm an African, pretty much.
No, you are. I mean, I think it's not that difficult to tell, right?
Right.
but there's scholars. I don't even know what the right term is. The academic edge that you have, right? There's got to be a term like scholar.
I call myself a professor, scholar, scholarly.
Scholarly, okay, there you go. That's the term that I was probably looking for. Yeah, that scholarly edge, though. Where does it come from?
That's a good question. I've always been like this. My parents say I came here like this. So, and that I had been here before. So, yeah. So I think it's, in the blood. I come from a line of people who are very into education. Okay. So I grew up around that, and I came here asking questions. My favorite word apparently growing up was why.
There you go.
So I think it's already been in me.
Right. Yeah, someone told me once that you can tell who's going to be a boss because they always ask why, right? And you can tell who's going to be operational because they just ask what, right? So the what's and whys determine who's going to be what. So a lot of times, as a parent, you can actually pretty much tell your children who's going to be a supporting role and who's going to be a leading role, right?
Yeah, I was a little boss. I was known to be bossy.
There you go.
I was known for that.
You said you have 2 siblings. Are you the oldest or the youngest?
Oh, I just have one.
Oh, you have one sibling,
I'm the
right?
youngest.
Okay.
I have an older sister who's wonderful.
Oh, okay. So you're the younger. Okay, so that's so you kind of a little bit of a middle, I guess, a bit of middle child syndrome or young child syndrome because you need attention, right? What's the age difference between the two of you guys?
Well, I definitely got a lot of attention growing up. I will say that, but so does she.
Yeah.
Because it's just us two. But she's 4 years older than me.
Oh, okay. So she had enough time to kind of adapt. Yeah.
To have her moment.
Right.
And then I had mine.
Yeah. So you guys probably now best friends.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a built-in best friend. But growing up, she didn't like me. So.
There you go. Yeah, you kind of
because I was annoying, you know.
You came in to steal the shine, and you always stayed on that whatever she was doing. I'm sure that you wanted.
I wanted
that
to follow her.
Yeah.
Oh, I want that outfit. Why can't I do what she's doing?
Yeah. Yeah. She's going out of high school, and you're going in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that worked out for her, so she didn't have to be bothered with me.
There you go.
That's
now,
so accurate.
your schooling was all done here in Houston?
Most of it. So I did my undergrad at U of H.
Okay.
I did 2 master's degrees at TSU, so right across the street.
What majors?
So in undergrad, I studied history, and I had a minor in dance and a minor in business administration.
Okay.
And then also, I was pre-law. Decided not to do that, obviously.
Oh.
Which I'm glad growing up, if you're talkative, they always say you should be a lawyer.
Yeah.
They never talk about how you can use persuasive speech or persuasive, writing in other fields.
Right.
So, obviously it worked out to be a professor.
Yeah.
And then for TSU, I have a master's in history.
Okay.
And I have a master's in public administration, public policy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then I have another master's.
Okay. So you have 3 masters.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a master's.
You're a real scholar.
All right.
You got a wall, and you're like one of those people that as soon as you enter their home is nothing but degrees.
Right, just collecting.
Right.
But after this PhD, I'm done. I'm done. I'm gonna tell you that.
Well,
but I have
no post-op. Come on now.
Give me a moment to process. But I have my MFA in dance, actually, and that's from University of the Arts.
Oh, okay.
Which is in Philly, and my PhD is from Philly in Temple, too.
Okay.
So, honestly, I say if I get really, really old and I'm claiming that I live to be really old, then I'll go to law school. I'll get a law degree at like 80.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that looks like a politician in the making, right?
Yeah, I used to have a very political leaning. Yeah, especially with my other master's degree.
Yeah. I mean, you're very, very talkative, very eloquent, good listener, a scholar, public speaker.
Yes, I've considered.
Influential.
It's important.
Yeah.
But I know I was a little disheartened when I used to be pretty heavy off into politics. I used to be a community organizer. I was actually in college president of our chapter of NAACP.
Okay.
And I started doing like different political campaigns. And I just was like, really like, this is what is going on here? Yeah. And it really threw me off a little bit.
So what specifically disheartened you?
I was just blown away by how people were using Black people as pawns, how they really were looking like us but really weren't for us.
Right.
And the ones who didn't look like us weren't for us either. And I'm like, oh, this is what's really happening behind the scenes. So it kind of threw me for a loop. Yeah. Maybe one day I will reconsider.
Yeah.
But that really threw me off. And I'm like, let's focus on more grassroots work.
Right.
And making immediate change. Because I felt like if I push for policies, I have a degree in that.
Right.
It's great, and people need to be doing that work, but I know that it can be turned over like that.
Indeed. Yeah, because it will always depend on who's
in office.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But one of the other things also is that, I mean, you of course know that, is that unless you engage and get involved in it, right, it will never change. You'll continue to be the same eventually. Although a lot of work is still good enough to just get a bit of it done.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm never going to advocate against being politically engaged.
Got you.
I'm never going to advocate. I'm politically engaged.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not I'll run is something I really wanted to do in the past. I'll reconsider. But no, definitely.
Right.
We should always fight for what's right.
There you go. Now, you did mention your schools, your colleges. Now, what about high school and middle school and elementary school. What schools did you go to?
Well, so for high school, I went to a high school for health professions.
Okay.
And it's funny because I never wanted to. I did not want to go to that school because I wasn't interested in health.
Okay. So what happened? How did you end up going?
So it was funny. I actually wanted to go to, I was preparing to go to a private boarding school.
Okay.
I got a full scholarship to go to a really good boarding school on the East Coast.
Okay.
Not too far from your area, in DMV area.
Okay. What's you can name the school if you want to.
I'm trying to remember the name of it. That's the problem.
Okay.
I don't exactly.
Was it in Shenandoah?
No, but I know about that school. It was in Maryland.
Okay.
But I applied for a lot of boarding schools in the area.
Gotcha.
But for whatever reason, I can't think of the name right now. But got a full scholarship there. They really wanted me to go there, and I got sick.
Okay.
And so my mom kind of was like, oh, I don't know if you should go. Because I was only 13, 12 and 13. Yeah. So I didn't apply for any local schools. Well, I think a handful. But I didn't get into the ones I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
And so the only schools that were really left were good were the really good magnet schools, and DeBakey was the best public school.
Yeah.
So at the last minute, I took the test, I got in, and that's where I ended up going, just because it was the best public school.
Gotcha.
But I didn't really want to go there.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. You enjoyed it though?
I did like it. I'm still friends with the people I met there. Any
good influences from there? Teachers that, in your opinion, kind of made a difference in who you are today?
We had some awesome teachers. We had a lot of people that really fed into us, and it was good. I didn't have a lot of distractions because everybody was nerdy.
Right.
So we didn't even have sports.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, I thought y'all were going to have a cheerleading team. They took the cheerleading team off.
Oh, wow.
And that was the only thing that got me. I was like, oh, at least I can be in cheerleading team and be in choir. And then they took all that out the first year. But it worked out because I'm not going to say college was a super breeze, but it was easier than a lot of people had it because I was really well prepared from high school.
Okay. So now what about middle school and elementary?
Middle school I will not name.
Why not? You should. It's always good because in my opinion, educators, they always get the least amount of credit, right? Although they the most influential people in our lives.
Well, yeah, because everybody needs a teacher to become whatever profession they want to have. Indeed. You need a teacher to be a doctor. So I agree. Yeah. I was a teacher before I became a professor. But no, I didn't have a good experience at that school, and I prefer not to name the school.
Okay.
For that reason, but we did have some good teachers there. I will say, but I had I dealt with a lot of racism at that school, and not a fan of the way I was treated, and some of the other black kids that were there. But we had some exceptions. I will say we did have some exceptions.
Gotcha. So if you had to give any advice to anyone who probably is confronting the same type of an issue that you confronted at that school, what would that advice be?
I would say speak up. I've always been an outspoken person, even as a kid. And I remember basically being bullied by teachers for speaking up against the racism I knew I was experiencing. And I was targeted. Even in high school, I dealt with racism with one teacher. The last year, she got fired because my school was about that life. But in middle school, it was the microaggressions. It was the kind of thing that would not fly now, but it flew then. Yeah. And I would say just speak up for yourself. Indeed. It doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah. Let somebody know.
Yes.
Right. Don't suffer in silence.
Exactly. Yeah. And even if it's not for yourself, for somebody else, and you see what's happening,
Indeed.
Be that person to speak up.
Right. Okay. Now, what about elementary school?
Elementary, I went to Poe.
Okay.
Edgar Allan Poe. And I went to St. Mary's. Now, St. Mary's has my full heart because I actually grew up going to church there too. So it was a church. It was a Black Catholic. It's a Black Catholic school and church. Okay. And so I went there for elementary for pre-K. My mom also went there. Yeah. My sister went there. So it was I have a very special place in my heart for St. Mary's.
Gotcha.
And Poe was a good school too.
Okay.
Yeah, I had some good educational experiences.
Yeah. Now, are you Catholic by faith? If
I used to be. Okay. So it's I grew up Catholic, you know, in the Catholic Church. You know, most people in Louisiana, South Louisiana are because of the influence of the French and the Spanish. Yeah. And I still absolutely respect the Black Catholic Church and the Black Church in general. I know that was one of the first, probably the oldest running institutions we have that Black people created in this country. Okay. But I personally, you know, also in my household, we practice African spirituality. Okay. Which is common. Okay. Whether people recognize it or not, or say it out loud or not. Gotcha. And so that is my path. Okay. That is what I do. Now I do go to church every now and then and support the church and my family, but it's not like the major path that I'm on because I do 100% practice African spirituality. Yeah. So, okay. Now let's go ahead and take our first break and kind of have you just, let's take a look at a few images of you doing anything of the things that you do, all right? So for those of you that just tuned to us, we are now checking out Dr. Garrett, she says. Yes. Lindsay, for those of you that know her very closely. We'll be right back.
Populoso e cheiroso, significado de responsável no mercado. Tataweza, Zalayabu, DJ Patrick.
And we are back. For those of you that just joined us, you're now tuned into Diaspra Central Spotlight with Gil Ingles, and my guest today is Miss Author, Professor, future politician, definitely a leader, Lindsay Gary.
Thank you. I don't know about that politician one. Oh,
it's coming.
You slid that in there.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. I see one before me right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. and you have done already enough, in all honesty, to be considered one, right?
Well, yeah, I've done a lot.
Yeah, that community involvement. Where does it come from? Is it a family thing? Community I guess the extended. Community, family, or who exactly? Is there one specific person that you can pinpoint probably as your biggest influence to it?
You know, I would say I just grew up like this. I mean, I do give myself credit, but a lot of I can't take all the credit for everything that I'm doing. I have to, you know, give credit to my parents who are phenomenal. Like, I mean, I'm trying to keep up with y'all. Yeah. And how can I raise my children in the way y'all raised me? But phenomenal parents. I grew up with amazing grandparents. Okay. And a very big family and an extended family. Like my grandfather, you know, was the last of 16 children, just to paint the picture of like the big family. And then also just extended family. So like lots of cousins, but also like non-blood relatives, you know what I mean? Right. So I grew up in a village, and so I was very, very involved in community. My parents were in different organizations, you know, at church, outside of church. You know, my grandparents, like my grandmother was in the NAACP. She was a precinct judge. Okay. You know, so I grew up around that life, and it's just something that I know I wouldn't be much without. Yeah. And so I just, you know, found it in me to give back to that. It's not something I like really think about. It's just what I do. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you had mentioned Third Ward as being your home place, right? And historically, right, that ward is very important to the city of Houston, right? From your perspective, what are some of the things that I guess every Houstonian should know and consider when looking or hearing things about Third Ward? Well, first of all, y'all got to buy my book. I hate to be that person, but I got to be that person. The New Red Book. Take a look at it. The New Red Book. Thank you. But it talks about, it's 50 of the Houston's historical and cultural sites. Yeah. Yes. Indeed. And it's an amazing book. And I'm not just saying that, but it's something I have wanted to see, which is why I just wrote it. I was like, well, we don't have it. Let's make it happen. But it talks about so many historical sites in the city. Actually, you'll see in the book that Third Ward has the most that are still standing. Right. Which is good and bad. It's good that we still have a certain amount still standing, but it's bad because we know how many were torn down and neglected throughout the city. But that's why Third Ward is so important, because it has the most out of any black neighborhood of these sites, you know?
But one of the interesting things, and that goes back to my point of mentioning you being a leader, right? Because a leader has specific qualities that make this. See, this is leader's move. This is boss move, right? This is being a boss, saying, hey, listen, this is important to us. I know that no one is paying attention to it, but all of you guys should at least know it. For those of you who are ready to receive that type of information, here it is. And for those of you who aren't, you'll be here whenever you're ready. You can come and check it out. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, definitely well done.
I appreciate that.
Yes. And looks like you got very good. You got, oh gracious, I'm just seeing out here you got major accolades on this one. The foreword by the mayor of the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was nice of him.
Yeah. How did that come to happen?
Well, I have a tour company. I have a few businesses and organizations that I'm running, and I reached out to a connection I had at the Cultural Affairs office and the mayor's office. I was like, would it be possible? And, she reached out to him, and he said he was interested in writing the foreword. I was actually, I was surprised. I was like, oh, that's all I had to do was ask,
Sometimes that's all you have to do, right?
Yeah. And it was a beautiful foreword, so I'm really happy that he contributed that way.
Yeah.
And that the office really supported the book and is currently still supporting it.
Definitely. So out of all these sites that you have here, which one is the one that you believe that everyone should
That's hard.
definitely visit? There's got to be one that you got to say that, you know what, if you come to Houston, you most definitely must visit this site.
Oh my gosh, there's so
regardless
many.
of race, religion,
Exactly.
anything,
And
right?
I'm glad you said that. This is a book for everybody because even if you're not from here, this is how you get, learn about the city. If you're from here, you probably need to learn about the city you live in anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, during the process of researching for the book, I came across things I had never heard of. And I consider myself pretty knowledgeable about the city.
Yeah.
But also, no matter what your race, whatever it is, this is still the city you live in. You know, we have to understand the contributions of Black people to the city.
Indeed.
Ooh, that's hard. Well, I really love, okay, let me tell you two places. I think it's really important to highlight the Black cemeteries we have in the city.
Okay.
Because some of them house some of the founders, considered to me to be the Black founders of the city.
Right.
People like Jack Yates, like the high school.
Yeah.
So Olivewood Cemetery is one of the oldest Black cemeteries in the city. And I know cemetery doesn't sound like exciting, but I really love Olivewood because you can actually see tangible aspects of African culture with the way that the cemetery was, designed.
Gotcha.
And the graves in particular.
Okay.
And I think it's important that we, in African culture in general, no matter where you are in the world, the way we treat our dead is how we recognize our ancestors.
Right.
And so I think that those represent that. But I would also say, it's hard in terms of other places. I really love Project Row Houses.
Okay. Okay.
I think that's a place you have to go to.
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't been yet, so I definitely gotta go then.
Yeah. Put the whole book on your list.
Yeah, I got the book on my list, and hopefully you get to sign this one to me.
I will.
Yeah,
that's why I brought it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
authorship. Right. I mean, of course, you, after so many degrees, okay, I'm sure that you probably, I know that you were not, I'm just bored and I need to do something. Yeah. What triggered it?
So I'm a writer. I've been a writer for a long time. I've written a lot of articles, poems, songs. I've written a lot of different things.
Okay.
I've been writing. That was like one of the earliest ways I could express myself was
Gotcha.
writing, besides talking, obviously. But there was an article I wrote, I think in 2020 or 2019. I'm like, and what really prompted me to write the article is when I moved to Philly.
Okay.
And I was always telling like my classmates at school, like, y'all gotta come visit Houston.
Right.
You gotta do this, this, and that. I'm like, we need a place where people can just find it easily, like where to visit, what to do. Yeah. So I wrote an article about it.
Okay.
And then I realized the article was not long enough. There were so many places I couldn't really highlight because there were so many,
Gotcha.
businesses and sites.
Yeah.
So that's really what brought me to write the book. I'm like, we need something that's more comprehensive. It's not exhaustive, right?
Yeah.
But it's more comprehensive, more space. And so, that's what brought me to this book. Yeah.
Well, guess what? I believe you have done a good service for all of us. I'm also new to this city, and I can definitely use this.
I'm glad.
I can definitely use this book because I'm new to the city, and by new I mean I've been here for a couple of years.
Yeah,
but
how many years?
Since 2015,
okay.
on and off, right? Or consistently, I should say. But I'm one of those homie guys. I really don't go out. Yeah, I can get in on Friday and not leave until Monday when I got to get back to the office. So I don't really go out and look for stuff. So aside from like when I'm doing music, if you may find me in the studio, if I'm doing the show, you may find me here at the station. And if I'm doing something community related, you'll probably find me at SAD.
SAD. That's another one of my favorites.
Institute. Yeah.
It's
They're also
there?
in the book. All right, SAD Institute. Shout out.
They're in the book. They're like the newest place in the book, actually.
Yes, it is. It's one of those hidden gems that I think that the city could have counted on.
Exactly.
Wow, the new Red Book.
Yes.
Why the title New Red Book?
So I struggled to find a title for a while. Initially, I think it was called The Guide to Black Houston or something like that. Just for like lack of a better title. And I wanted it to be a guidebook, so something that would assist with tourism, because I want people to like actually go to these places and support them so that they won't get torn down like the other ones did, right?
Yeah.
But as I was researching, I came across this book called The Red Book. And it was written in, I think, the early 1900s by Black people in the city of Houston. And it was really similar. It was like talking about all the cultural institutions, the churches, the schools that Black Houstonians had created.
Wow.
And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That, somebody, that they wrote this book. And like, I hadn't heard of it. A lot of people, I'm sure, hadn't heard of it.
Well, you did say that you've been here before, so maybe you had written it.
Look, maybe I tapped into something. I don't know. But I was blown
great
away.
Minds, huh?
Look,
great minds.
I'm just glad that they had written it.
Right.
But, I wanted to just kind of honor that book and, call attention to this older book that was written by calling it the New Red Book, so people could say, okay, what was the old Red Book? And look at that and just see, like, what our people were doing. Some of them were formerly enslaved and they were doing we don't have an excuse.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, they had everything. They
none at all. Yeah, and talking about excuses, there's a topic that I kind of like to pick your brain on, and that is the fact that currently, in my personal opinion, I believe that we now are probably the highest economic capacity that we have ever been. But yet, it still feels like we're doing the least with that capacity. Why do you think that is?
I think we're not as connected as we should be. I think that everybody's busy. And that's not just the Black community, but everybody in the world at this point. We're distracted, and we don't know how to unify for a collective effort. So somewhere down the line, we lost, not all of us, but some of us have lost that ability or interest, but, in lieu of other interests. I think that we can still come together. We just have to organize ourselves to do that. We didn't have a choice but to be dependent upon each other right after slavery ended. And so I think sometimes we're like, we just need ourselves, like individually, or our families, and we don't lean into each other as a community. We live all over the city, for example. We don't all live in Third Ward or in Fifth Ward, or, we're spread out now. I think that we have the power to do it. We just have to do it.
Yeah. Reorganize.
Reorganize and stay connected and use our money. Like, stop talking about it. I can't say how annoyed I was in 2020. I was glad so many things were coming to light. But I was really annoyed because I'm like, people have been doing this work and you don't pay attention until you see something tragic in the news. Why do we have to be like re-traumatized in order for us to say, let's do something? That's a big annoyance to me. And I want us to just stay focused. Keep doing all the things we want to do, but like, stay focused.
Focusing,
and organized.
Got you. Yeah. And let's take another quick break and take a look at maybe a few images, since we're talking about the new Red Book, right?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll be right back. And we are back. If you have just joined us, you're now tuned into Diaspra Central. And yes, of course, we too have with us still.
I'm here.
And I say still. Miss, the new Red Book author, Lindsay Gary.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Houston.
It.
Yes, H-Town.
Indeed. So I should probably say Diaspora stand up.
Yes.
Houston
seriously.
is now in the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come through.
And very well represented.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's now kind of hop into your trips. You are very well traveled, young lady.
Yeah.
What exactly made you start doing that?
Got to give it back to the parentals on that one. Yeah. I mean, most of my international trips are like domestic, across the country type of road trips were family trips growing up. So, yeah, I mean, we grew up with that being represented as something important, to read about things, but also go see them if you can. Right. Because that's the only way you can really learn and understand certain things, being in another environment or connecting with other people. So I just continued a lot of what I already had.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned representation and that you mentioned being exposed to things.
That's the word, exposure.
Yeah, exposure is very important because I tell a lot of people here, I've run into a lot of people here in Houston who have never been to Washington, D.C.
Which is
and I tell them all the time that the Mid-Atlantic region, just like the southern region of the United States, is also very important to the United States as a country because we sometimes fail to realize that there was actually the first landing happened in the Mid-Atlantic region, right? Although Africa is south of here, it's still the first landing was in the Mid-Atlantic region. So going and understanding how those communities that have basically come from that have managed to survive and exist even today. It's important, right?
Yes.
And understanding that culture. But
definitely,
you didn't limit yourself to the borders of the United States of America. You actually decided to go ahead and go across the ocean.
Yes.
Yeah, and not just go across the ocean for the sake of saying that I went and I set foot. No, really.
Right.
With the purpose of 1, learning, 2, understanding, 3, enlightening and being enlightened.
Right.
Yeah.
And connecting. I always get emotional when I talk about when I went to Senegal, especially because I have ancestry from there on both sides.
Right.
And so it really made me realize, when Europeans took my ancestors captive, they didn't expect anybody to go back.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like, we're going to take these people across. There was a high likelihood that my ancestors wouldn't have even survived, going across the Atlantic Ocean. So the fact that they survived the voyage, that they survived the enslavement for hundreds of years, the oppression, that I'm born years later, that I actually make it back there. And guess who also went there first? My dad.
Oh, wow.
And he went, I think, in the 70s. Yeah. So that was never something that they expected, but it's what our ancestors prayed for.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And the fact that I was able to go back and I felt that welcome. I knew that I was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
That is something I can't really put fully into words, that feeling.
Indeed. Yeah, that return, I can imagine being a very emotional thing, and I can imagine that because after leaving the continent, I spent approximately 20 years without going back. Ooh, right? Yeah. So the first time that I went back, it was a bit overwhelming also, right? Because in the 20 years that you stay away from it also, you do create this image in your head of what you think it is. And once you land and you start to actually look at it, you start to realize that some things may not be exactly what you thought they were, right? So, but to you, what was the biggest shock once you landed in the continent?
Well, let me say this. So when I went to Senegal, that wasn't my first time on the continent. Okay. I had already been to Tanzania, to South Africa, Morocco, to Egypt. Those are all very different places.
Right. Different coasts too.
Yeah, literally, like various
east,
parts.
south,
exactly.
North, west.
You gotta make it to Central.
Yeah.
That's
Congo.
Congo. Yeah, it's top on my list. That whole area. Yeah. Definitely want to go to Angola too. But So when I went to Senegal, let me speak on that because I also went to Ghana as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So let me talk about Senegal in particular because I didn't really go there with a lot of expectations because I already kind of knew just from my own research and just having been on the continent. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm expecting to see this because it wasn't like my first time.
Gotcha.
But I was completely blown away by like how connected I felt. Now, the first time I went to Ghana, it was everything that I had expected and hoped for.
Yeah.
It was, I think it's a good place to go for your first time if you're from the diaspora and have been, generations removed from the continent, because people were like, it was everything that you would want, to be welcomed. Yeah. For people to be friendly, you know what I mean? Not to stereotype, but that was my experience. And I was happy I had that. And there were some other places I went, I was like, ooh, that wasn't what I was looking for. For example, when I went to South Africa, there was a lot of rudeness I got immediately. Like even before I got out of the airport, which was a little unsettling, but I understood the context of that. Not to say it was right. Right. But it was a little unsettling to not be welcome there. Yeah. Initially. But, I would say that when you go to the continent, please, do your research, but also like be open to what you're going to experience.
Yeah, prepare yourself emotionally for the impact. Because there is an impact, and it could be positive or negative also based on the perspective on how one receives it, right?
Exactly.
I think there's a great mind that once said that it's not what it is done to you, it's how you receive it.
That's correct.
Right? Yeah.
Ooh, 1,000%. 1,000%, for sure.
Yeah, indeed. So which one of all those places was your favorite one, though?
Well, it's a tie between Ghana and Senegal. I would have to say Ghana, and then when I went to Senegal, now Senegal. Yeah. Yeah. Nigeria was cool too, but it's just something like, I feel like I'm supposed to be there. It's just like a strong
Senegal.
Oh my God. It's just, and I don't know if you know this, but where my family is from in Louisiana, they're not from New Orleans. They're from the country part, the rural part, Southwest Louisiana. Okay. So like Lafayette and the surrounding areas. Okay. Lafayette is like the city compared to the towns that my family is from. Right. One of those is called St. Martinville. Okay. Which was a direct port from Gorée Island, Senegal. So a lot of my ancestors literally, they didn't make any stops. They came straight
went from port to port.
Straight shot. Right. So I think that's part of the reason why I feel that like
the connection is still strong.
Because even the culture in Louisiana is heavily Senegalese.
Yeah. The French influence, I think.
The French, I don't feel like they influence as much as people give them credit for. Most of what we have culturally is from Senegal and some from the Congo region. Within
the African culture in Louisiana, right?
Exactly.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that's definitely. I think I was talking to someone from Haiti, and they kind of were saying exactly the same thing. And in some cases, actually, the person from Haiti was even saying that that the most influential culture in Haiti was really the African culture, although people at times attempted to credit either the French or the Indians from East India, right?
Yeah,
the people from India.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, there are a lot of them there too.
My dissertation is about that. My dissertation is literally on the African culture of Louisiana.
Can we talk about it a little bit?
Of course.
Yeah. So what exactly triggered that? I mean, of course, I can tell, but I want to hear from you. I don't want to assume.
Yeah, I feel you. But no, it was really because the black people in Louisiana are called Creole. So I grew up, and I think y'all have that in Angola too. Yes. So I grew up being called Creole. I'm technically a part of that community.
Right.
I don't personally like that term, which is a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my preference, but you know, I am Creole in terms of that.
Yeah, you basically, which I guess and I guess based on I guess I don't even know. I think that term is originally Latin. I'm not sure.
It's like a Portuguese.
It's a Portuguese, right? It's Latin,
term.
which basically means hybrid, right, or a mix of two things.
And that's why I'm like, and that's why the whole dissertation is really kind of interrogating the terminology,
right? Because
I am basically arguing that there are other influences. I mean, everywhere around the world you have influences from different cultures.
Yeah.
Everywhere, unless you're just like never contacted any outside group. But my argument is that the culture is fundamentally, like at the foundational level, African.
Right.
And so that's what I'm making. So everything from the food, the language. For example, the language used to be called Louisiana Creole. Yeah. Now we call it Corivini. And some people still call it Creole or French. But the grammar, so the vocabulary is heavily French.
Yeah, definitely.
But the grammar is African.
Right.
And if you know anything about languages, I'm sure you know, they're usually categorized according to their grammatical structure, not the vocabulary.
Right.
So if the grammar is African, why are we calling it Creole language or dialect? Or why are we calling it French when it's grammatically consistent with many African languages? Right. You know, the food we eat, almost, I would say 95% of the food is African food. Yeah. From gumbo to jambalaya, which is like jollof rice. Right. The rice influence overall. Yeah. I mean, these are just like two examples, but it's like everything that we call Creole or French is really just African. So how do we just like neglect that whole thing? And you have some people that say, oh, they give them a little credit, but we need more credit. Right. To what, to where it is.
Yeah, and I think awareness is probably the reason why that didn't happen, or that is just starting to happen now, right? I mean, what you're doing, of course. And another thing is owning the narrative, right? Because in all honesty, I believe that people of African descent have never really owned their narrative, right? It's just based in processes. The process of actually passing history down has been different for us. We primarily went by word of mouth. Other people actually went by ensuring that it was printed in black and white. Although we originated that form, still is not something that we kept,
we all did,
right? Yeah, or that we all did, and then the diversity also within even the African, how can I say, the African descendant communities in itself also. That's major. That's huge.
Exactly. Because
a lot of people at times think that when you say Africa, they're just expecting like one specific,
monolithic,
people, and when it's very diverse. I mean, so
we have a lot of similarities, but there are definitely variations, and I mean, it's a huge continent.
Indeed.
So how can you expect somebody who's living in a desert area to have the exact same thing going on as somebody in a tropical area? But at the same time, we have a lot of things that are similar and that are consistent, but there are so many manifestations, for sure.
Indeed. Yeah, and I think that individuals, scholars such as yourself also, when they start shining light into the fact that there are a lot of similarities that we actually should be holding on to in order to ensure that we create a much bigger and cohesive community, it's important. And for that, we definitely appreciate it. We're going to take another break and take a look at some more images, and we'll be right back with Dr. Lindsay Gary. And we are back. If you just joined us, tuned into Diaspra Central with Gil Ingles. And on this spotlight, we have his author of the new Red Book, Dr. Lindsay Gary.
Coming soon. Thank you so much. Coming soon. I'm so ready to be done.
You know what? Look, being a scholar takes you faced a lot of challenges, I'm sure. And I kind of want to touch on some of those because on this segment, what I kind of want to do is in part touch on things that or advice that you could give to other individuals that may be either trying to take the same path that you have taken or trying to get somewhere and they feel like they facing the same challenges that you probably faced at some point, right? Of course, you have several, you have one undergrad degree, but several masters. Yes. and now you're going for the PhD, and you're saying that you're not going for postdoc, which I honestly think that you will end up doing it. I think it's just your... No. It's part of you, really. It's like you're just a scholar, and that's what people do, right? Yeah, a genius in a way, and and definitely one that benefits that is doing things to benefit the society. On your trips to Africa, of course, you have done not only. As a matter of fact, you took a look at garments, ways of dressing, culture, right? It wasn't all about book and reading and it's you are a very well diverse person. What were some of the biggest challenges that you encountered as you were threading that path to where you are now?
Along the dissertation path or the doctorate path?
Well, in all honesty, I kind of want to start because I know that at some point as you were doing your, probably maybe even in elementary school or maybe even in high school, you had decided to tell someone, you know what, one day I'm going to be this or do that. And probably some of the tension already started there, right? And I want you to start talking really from that level because there are today, especially with technology, kids at a much younger age kind of face things that some of us only faced at a much later time in our age, right? So.
I think for me, I will say that I didn't really get that close to home. My parents were very encouraging. My large community and family were like, I always felt like I grew up without limitations. Gotcha. You know how some people felt like, oh, they have to do one thing or they can only go so far. I clearly...
No glass ceilings.
Never had that.
Sky is the limit.
I mean, beyond the sky. You know, I always felt like that and always felt supported. But, you know, definitely with other people who weren't in my community, you know, they were always, you know... I remember even being like a little girl, people saying I talk too much, you know, telling me, you know... I'm bossy, you know, and just things that I know if I was a little white girl or a little white boy, they wouldn't have said. Right. Things that they would have encouraged. So definitely you always have what you call these little haters, these like people who want to pull down instead of really encourage and fortify young people. But I think a lot of that was balanced off with the fact that I was getting so much support. At home.
Right. So,
a lot of support.
So basically, the importance of having a solid home base
is so important.
Yeah, make the biggest difference.
I can't express it enough. And never shutting your children down. Like always, I don't want to say grooming. I'm looking for a different term, but just like facilitating.
Their strengths. That is the right term. Yeah,
you know, like really encouraging. You know, and if like. And also not pressuring too much, putting too much pressure. I think sometimes people put too much pressure, and I feel like my parents. I'm like, how did y'all know what to do to have that balance?
Yeah, I should have met them before I became a parent.
Because I'm trying to.
I think I put a little bit of pressure because I only have one child. I have one daughter, and I think I may be a bit of. A pressure guy, although I kind of really let her run. I let her run pretty much. It's just, but when I know that she's headed the wrong way, I'm like, you know what? Hey,
you gotta pull her back. Yeah, that's your job.
And I think, and that's what I think it is. And I think the fact that which is probably a challenge that you may have faced also. I think at times the fact that you always let alone to actually run your own race when sometimes people come in to kind of redirect you, you don't kind of receive it.
Yeah, I think
with a welcome approach, or how was it for you?
Yeah, well, like I said, I've always been like, I remember came across something, it was something that my teachers wrote about me. And let me see if I can find it really quickly.
Sure.
But they wrote this statement, so I do feel like I had the skills and the tools to push back against people who, you know, my parents were like, somebody hit you, hit them back. You ask questions later.
Yeah.
Literally.
Right.
So, you know, I used to get into fights in school
Oh,
because
really?
I wouldn't start it, but I would finish
So
it.
you a scholar and a fighter.
I'm a finisher. I'm not going to pick a fight with you. But if you started, whether it's a verbal something or, you know, something physical, obviously not to the same extent nowadays.
Right.
But, you know, I would shut that down because my parents are like, you always have to stand up for yourself.
Right.
You ask questions later, somebody punching you. Because, you know, the teachers back then be like, to go tell the teacher.
Yeah.
They were like, but if you go tell the teacher, that child's going to bully you. They're going to fight you. So my parents were like, no, you hit back first, then you tell the teacher.
There you go.
But here's what the teacher said about me in preschool at St. Mary's School. So it's also important to have really good black teachers. I would advocate for that.
Representation.
So important.
Right.
And I say good. They can't just be anybody.
Right.
But Lindsay is a strong, confident child, well-spoken and in control. That's what my teacher said about me when I was in pre-K. So I don't know. I think it's somebody's ancestral spirit was in there already. Plus, you know, that support I had from my family. But
It's home.
Yeah.
It's home, and also the presence of both parents.
Yeah, that's
right?
important.
That's big. It's major. I mean, at times with that, I'm not trying to say that there are no exceptions in which the lack of one parent in a household may not create a great child, but the chances of actually having a child that is definitely well-rounded by having both parents in a household it's some point. So picking schools, right? Venturing outside of your own demographic, your own area. If you had to give advice to someone that was actually going that route.
To pick a school? Like for college?
To college, or, I mean, you were trying to go to a boarding school even before college, so.
Yes.
Right?
I would say, and you know, that's a really good question. I know for me, it's really important for my children to go, my future children. They're not here yet.
Yeah.
Not physically, maybe spiritually. But for them to go to AfroCentric schools, I think it's really important to have schools where they see people that look like them teaching them.
Okay.
And they have that educational structure that is representative of them as well. Because I did have that in my very first. So even though all my schools weren't like that, my very first school was a black school. It was a Catholic school, but it was a black school. Yeah. You know, and so that having that, and we didn't, you know, I should also say we didn't grow up praying to white Jesus.
Okay.
We prayed to a black Jesus at the church I went to. It was a Pan-African Catholic church. We had Adinkra symbols and, you know, so I didn't have, well, you know, it wasn't always like that. It changed. But I didn't have that imagery.
Gotcha.
And everybody I saw looked like me. So it really helped with my foundation, my identity, my confidence, which I think is very important for little kids in their development.
Gotcha.
They don't have to like really sort through things at that early age.
Gotcha. All right. So not be afraid of pushing forward either way.
Right. And if you can't go to that, you know, make sure that you're doing the things, the supplemental things. If your children go to a predominantly, you know, white school or more diverse school, just always make sure that they have what they need. Be in that PTA or whatever. Be actively involved. And always at home re-encouraging.
Right.
Like, you have to do the extra work when they don't go to a school where everybody looks like them.
Okay. Now we're gonna get into the portion of questions or conversation that you don't have to answer them if you don't want to.
Okay.
But I do have to ask because I believe that as part of Diaspora Central is really a network service also, and you did mention children and you said future children. So are you currently engaged or involved with someone?
Next question.
Next question. All right. So we move on into the next question.
Okay.
If that person had to engage or get involved with Dr., because at this point we're looking already, right? Lindsay Gary, what would that individual have to be, have, or act like?
Okay. Well, for me, how do I answer this in a roundabout way?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
She said roundabout.
Roundabout way. Well, I would say I'm in a relationship. Let me just say that.
All right.
So the person, the person I'm in, my partner, it's important for. I don't really have. I don't know.
A list of requirements.
No, I think it's good for people to have a list. But I think it's okay. I think it's okay for people to have a list.
Okay.
But I don't think it's necessary to like have to check every single thing off that list.
Got you. Okay.
But I think what's important in a relationship is for that person to be supportive, for that person to be understanding. I mean, this sounds so cliche, but it's so real. And especially for somebody like me, who's doing so many different things, for that person to like understand the things that I'm doing and to be like celebrating those things, not questioning them.
Involved, in other words.
Yeah.
Engaged.
And also like on that kind of similar trajectory, if it's not to the same extent,
Right.
on a, that wave,
Indeed.
that consciousness at least. But somebody that's supportive, caring, loving, willing to grow. But also, for me, it's important for that person to help you grow.
Gotcha.
And I know that sounds like super cliche to say, but it's really important because I don't think in my previous relationships I grew much. I mean, I learned from whatever things I went through in the relationship. I don't think that other person helped me to grow.
Yeah. I mean, they say that iron sharpens iron, right?
Seriously.
Yeah, because if you get iron and wood, one will become dull and the other one will just become damaged.
Exactly.
Right? So iron sharpens iron. So she needs an iron. So don't come to her with that weak stuff.
Yeah, well, you don't have to come to me at all.
Yeah,
I'm
don't come to her at all. She's taken. She said that she's definitely taken. So it's no longer a relationship. She's taken. She's done. He's the one. Okay.
I'm done. Next question.
Don't come through. Next question. One of the biggest difficulties that many women of African descent find is that they believe that men of African descent are afraid of women who are actually accomplished. Has that been your experience?
I don't think that is a racialized thing. I think in some contexts, men in general can be like that.
Okay.
I've never dated outside of my race. I can't speak for that fully, but just from what I've seen.
Would you though? If
no.
you had to? No.
Not my cup of tea. I want black children.
Oh, okay.
African children, 100%.
Okay.
But that's a whole other conversation. I won't get into people's relationships. I'm worried about my own.
Okay.
But for me, no, that's a no-go. Okay. But in terms of like, in my personal experience, I definitely have dated men who, were intimidated by me for sure.
Okay.
And tried to pull me down, like just negative, didn't understand, questioning everything I was doing, their own insecurities, projected onto me.
Right.
For sure. Can I say that that's something that's just something that we experience in our community? No. But as a person who dates people in our community, that is something that black men, African men have to address. And if you look at ancient African history, black women were I can't even say queens in every case, but just leaders of nations.
Right.
And it didn't even matter if you were male or female. You could be a king, you could be a pharaoh. Right. And so I think we need to get back to respecting women and understanding the equality and the divine essence that women carry, and let go of all this other stuff, because I think that really has tainted our opinions of women and even made men from our community feel less than, So I want us to like let go of what we can from the outside world and really think internally about how we treat each other. Because to me, there should be way more support. I hear too many black women complaining. I hear black men complaining. So there's definitely something that needs to be solved. And I don't think it's going to be by looking at white relationships.
Okay. All right. So something that needs to be done internally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in regards to the book, where could people pick up this great resource?
Yes, the new red book, my baby. So the book is available through the Printing Museum, which is a phenomenal museum. They're actually reopening, I think, early next year because they are doing renovations. They moved to a new location.
Okay.
But they are the publishers of the book. I'm their first publication, actually.
Okay. All right.
I was their inaugural writer in residence.
What was the publishing company?
It's called the Printing Museum.
Okay.
And so it's dedicated to like the history of printing, and they do a lot of cool workshops. So you can pick it up there on their website, theprintingmuseum.org.
Okay.
If not, it's on the back of the book.
Yeah.
Or Amazon.
Gotcha.
I know Amazon is a little,
Yeah.
But it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. That's a good thing. Hey, we looking to make this one a bestseller. There's definitely enough people in this city that could make this first, I guess, the debut of the Printing Museum Press.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Congratulations. Any shout outs?
Thank you. Oh, I want to shout out my family. I'm just, as I get older, I'm just more and more in awe of them and everything they've done to support me and my sister and our other family members. I come from a stellar family, so I give them a big shout out. I want to shout out my businesses as well.
All right.
So
you can plug them.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna plug them. We're gonna plug them.
Yeah,
I have many. Dance Africana.
Okay.
I can't talk about each one and what they mean. We ain't got enough time.
Oh, got you.
Dance Africana, Shawari Tours, Africana Book Club's gonna be bookstore. I want to shout out the Re-Education Project, Adele Properties.
Okay.
I have many. Gumbo the podcast. I have a podcast.
Oh,
my film, Who Your People. It's a documentary film that talks.
So you have a film out?
Yeah, I have a film out. We're currently doing screenings. It premiered in April. It's on the African roots of Louisiana Creole culture.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
See, things that I didn't even know.
I got a lot of things, but yeah, definitely those things. And I want to shout out, of course, God and the ancestors for everything, all the things, and the diaspora as well.
Oh, thank you.
And you.
Thank you. No, definitely. Listen, to me, it's an honor to have you not only visit us and consider this place home for you. If there's anything that we can do to assist you on whatever you have going on, do not hesitate to stop by and ask us to do so.
Okay,
we'll be more than gladly do that. And it's just, listen, a great pleasure to see someone accomplished, someone inspiring, right? And keep doing what you're doing, because you're definitely meaning something, not just for this community, but really for the global community.
Yes.
All right. And for those of you that joined us, remember that it is possible and it can be done. As you have seen, one of the consistent things that was part of the theme of this conversation was family. Some of us at times do take that for granted. Remember, look within, look in the mirror. If you are that family, be that family. Until next time, peace.